Ever feel like you're stuck in first gear when it comes to learning?
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, get ready for a serious upgrade because today's deep dive is all about Bloom's taxonomy.
Bloom's taxonomy. I feel like I heard about that way back in school, right?
You're right, it's been a cornerstone of education for ages, but trust me, this isn't just some dusty old theory.
Okay, you've got my attention. So what's the big deal with Bloom's taxonomy then?
Well, we got our hands on some serious insider info, instructor guides, training manuals, the works.
Ooh, real deal stuff. What kind of secrets did you uncover?
Think of it this way. Bloom's taxonomy is like a secret decoder ring for unlocking your brain's full learning potential.
I like the sound of that. So how does it actually work?
It all starts with understanding those different levels of thinking that we go through when we're truly learning something new.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just about cramming your brain full of facts and figures, right?
Exactly. And that's where our sources come in. They break down this whole process into clear, actionable steps.
Ooh, I'm all about actionable steps. Lay it on me.
First up, they talk about three main domains: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Too many big words at once.
Sorry. Let me simplify. Today, we're focusing on that cognitive domain, the powerhouse of knowledge and intellect.
Okay, that makes sense. It's all about boosting that brain power.
Exactly. And within that domain, the original Bloom's taxonomy model outlines 6 levels of understanding.
6 levels. All right, break it down for me. What's level 1?
Level 1 is all about knowledge remembering those core facts and processes.
Okay, so like remembering dates for a history test or the steps in a recipe?
You got it. Our sources emphasize that remembering is super important, but it's just the starting point.
Right, it's like having all the ingredients for a cake but no clue how to actually bake it.
No, you're getting it. And that brings us to level 2, comprehension.
Okay, so what's the difference between knowledge and comprehension?
It's about going beyond just knowing the information. It's about truly understanding it, making it your own.
So not just spitting back facts, but actually being able to explain them in my own words.
Bingo. One of our sources called it personal understanding. I think that's spot on. It's like the difference between reading a recipe and truly grasping how those ingredients work together.
Or like learning a new language, you can memorize a bunch of vocabulary words, but it's not the same as actually understanding the grammar and how to construct sentences.
Exactly. That deeper understanding is what allows you to then take that knowledge, actually do something with it.
All right, so we've got remembering and understanding. What comes next?
That brings us to level 3, application. This is where things start to get really practical.
Practical. Tell me more. I'm all about putting knowledge to good use.
It's about taking that theoretical knowledge you've built up and making it actionable in real-world scenarios.
Give me an example. I'm a bit lost.
Imagine you're learning a new software program for your job. You can read the manual cover to cover, but until you actually sit down and start using it, you don't truly understand how it all comes together.
Ah, so it's like living the rules of a game. You can study the rulebook all you want, but you won't truly get it until you're actually playing, making decisions on the fly.
Exactly. That's where the real learning magic happens.
Okay, this is good stuff. We've gone from remembering to understanding to applying. What's next on our climb up the Bloom's taxonomy ladder?
Hold on tight, because level 4 is where we put on our detective hats and dive into analysis.
Analysis. Does that mean we solve a mystery?
Kind of. It's about digging deeper, going beyond the surface level, and figuring out the why behind the what.
So, like, if we were trying to solve an actual mystery, we wouldn't just look at the clues individually. We'd search for patterns.
Yes. We look for connections, inconsistencies, anything to help us piece together what really happened. That's analysis in a nutshell.
It's like becoming a detective of knowledge.
Our sources describe analysis as breaking information down into its core parts, spotting patterns, and then figuring out how it all connects.
So it's not just about understanding the what, it's about understanding the why and the how as well.
You got it. And get this, our sources say things like debates and even troubleshooting tech issues are awesome ways to sharpen those analytical skills.
Because those activities force you to think critically and solve problems, right?
Exactly. They even talk about learning to spot those sneaky logical fallacies and separating hard facts from opinions.
Now we're talking. Those are essential skills for navigating today's world, especially with so much information constantly coming at us.
And speaking of creating something new, that leads us perfectly to the next level, synthesis.
Synthesis. Okay, now this sounds interesting.
This is where we take all those analyzed pieces of information, all those individual puzzle pieces we've examined, and start building something entirely new and original.
Wait, so it's about taking all that we've learned and creating something from it.
You got it. It's like taking all those ingredients we've gathered and understood and then whipping up a masterpiece, whether it's a piece of writing, a work of art, or even a new business strategy.
So instead of just following a recipe, we're coming up with our own unique dishes.
Now you're cooking. One of our sources used the analogy of a jazz musician, which I really like. They've spent years mastering their instrument, studying music theory, absorbing different styles. All that's knowledge and comprehension, right?
Right, building those foundational skills.
But then, when they launch into an improvised solo, they're taking all those elements and creating something spontaneous and new right there in the moment. That's synthesis.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. It's like they're not just playing music, they're creating something new from their knowledge and experiences.
Exactly. Okay, so we've climbed up the cognitive ladder from remembering to understanding, applying, analyzing, and now synthesizing. Pretty impressive, right?
We're on fire. But wait, there's still another rung on this ladder, right?
You bet. And it's a big one. We're talking about the top level in the original Bloom's taxonomy evaluation.
Evaluation, huh? Judgment Day. So is this all about getting the right answer?
Well, not quite. Evaluation is less about being right or wrong and more about, like, critically sizing up the information you've got. It's about judging its worth, forming your own conclusions. That's what our sources say.
So it's more about thinking for yourself than just accepting what you're told.
Exactly. It's about weighing the evidence,
Yeah.
thinking about different points of view, making those informed decisions, but you've got to base it on solid analysis.
I like it. So it's not enough to just have an opinion. You've got to be able to back it up, right?
100%. Articulate why you believe what you believe. Support it with facts, logical arguments, the whole 9 yards.
This makes a lot of sense, especially these days. We're bombarded with information. It's 24/7 news, social media, you name it. Being able to actually evaluate all that stuff, that's super important.
That's what our sources say too. They gave some interesting real-world examples of evaluation in action. Like say you're reading a news story about some controversial issue.
Okay, so I don't just accept everything I read as gospel.
Nope. A good evaluator doesn't just take it at face value. They think about the source, look for any potential biases, maybe check it against other credible sources.
Do their own fact-checking, basically.
Exactly. And then they come to their own conclusions based on all that.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just external stuff too, you know. Evaluation also applies to our own ideas and work.
Oh, that's interesting. You mean like if I write a song, I shouldn't be afraid to get feedback and make changes.
Precisely. Or if you're working on a project at work. Being able to honestly evaluate your own stuff, figure out what needs improving, that's crucial for growth, according to our sources.
So it's like having a built-in quality control system for our own thoughts and decisions.
I like that. Now, you did mention that this was the original Bloom's taxonomy. That always makes me wonder if there's like a newer model.
You're right. There is a group of cognitive psychologists, really smart folks, revisited and revamped it back in 2000.
Okay, so not that long ago, all things considered. So what did they change? What's different about this updated Bloom's taxonomy?
Well, one big thing is they shifted from nouns to verbs to describe the different levels.
Verbs, like action words. Why did they do that?
It emphasizes how learning is an active process, always moving, always evolving. So knowledge becomes remembering, comprehension becomes understanding, and so on. It's about what you do with what you know.
Okay, action over just memorization. Got it. So what else is different?
Perhaps the most significant change is how they reordered the top two levels.
Really? They switched them around. How does that work?
In the updated Bloom's taxonomy, creating actually takes the top spot now, with evaluating right below it.
Wow. So creating something new is the highest form of learning now. That's really interesting. Why the switch, though?
Well, it reflects a deeper understanding of how learning and creativity, those aha moments, are intertwined. Think about it. To create something truly new, you have to draw on all those lower level skills, right?
Yeah, you need those building blocks.
Exactly. You have to remember, understand, apply what you've learned, analyze, and evaluate before you can bring it all together into something new.
It's like reaching the peak of that learning pyramid. So this updated version really highlights the power of creation.
It does. And this revised taxonomy also dives deeper into what's called metacognitive knowledge.
Meta what now? That's a
Yeah.
mouthful.
Metacognition, it's a fancy way of saying thinking about your own thinking.
Oh, so like reflecting on how I learn best, what works for me, when to change up my approach, that kind of thing.
You've got it. It's about being your own learning coach, understanding your strengths, weaknesses, and using those insights to learn more effectively.
So we have two versions of Bloom's taxonomy now.
Mm.
one that lays out these 6 levels of understanding, and an updated one that stresses action, creating, and really understanding how we learn best.
Right. Both super valuable tools.
Absolutely. But our sources didn't stop there. They actually dug a bit deeper into the nitty-gritty of the cognitive domain, talking about different types of knowledge.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, first up, you've got your factual knowledge, which is like the what, those basic facts, dates, definitions, the stuff we usually think of when we hear knowledge.
The building blocks.
Then there's conceptual knowledge, which is more about understanding the why behind the what.
So less about memorizing dates and more about understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly, like knowing the major events of World War II is factual knowledge, but understanding the underlying causes and its long-term impact, that's conceptual.
Got it. What about that procedural knowledge you mentioned?
That's all about the how. It's about knowing how to do things. Like, I know how to bake a cake from memory. That's procedural knowledge in action.
So it's applying what we know to actually do something.
Exactly. And last but definitely not least, we've got that metacognitive knowledge. It's like having that bird's eye view of your own learning process, understanding how you learn best and what strategies help you really get it.
Okay, all this talk about different kinds of knowledge. It's a lot, but it's good stuff. But how do we actually use it? Like, how do I apply Bloom's taxonomy in my everyday life to learn more effectively? That's what I want to know.
$1 million question, right? Well, lucky for us, our sources had some great advice on that front.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One of the biggest takeaways was the importance of setting crystal clear learning goals. Like, what do you actually want to learn and how well do you want to know it?
Makes sense. If you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you get there? But how do you turn those goals into, like, an actual plan?
That's where choosing relevant activities comes in. If you're aiming for those higher levels of thinking, the analysis, synthesis, evaluation, you can't just passively absorb information, right? You've got to actively engage with it.
So instead of just reading a chapter in a textbook, maybe I should try to create a mind map or something.
Exactly. Or come up with real-world examples. Maybe even try explaining the material to somebody else.
I like that. It's about making it your own. And how do we know if it's actually working?
Assessment. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Our sources stress that regularly checking your understanding is key.
So quizzes aren't just about grades.
Not at all. Think of them as feedback. They help you see what you've mastered and what you still need to work on so you can tweak your approach as you go.
Okay, that makes sense.
Our sources talk about 2 main types of assessment, formative and summative. Formative is all about those ongoing check-ins during the learning process, quizzes, quick reflections, stuff like that. Summative happens at the end, like a final exam, to see what you've learned overall.
So it's about getting a complete picture of your progress.
Right, and here's the best part. Assessment doesn't have to be a drag. Our sources are big on making it engaging and even fun.
Fun! How do you make assessment fun?
Think games, quizzes, projects, even self-reflection can be engaging if you do it right. It's all about finding what works for you.
That makes sense. So it's not just about testing your knowledge, it's about using assessment as a tool for growth.
Now you're getting it. And one of the things our sources really hammered home was the importance of creating detailed lesson plans or learning plans that actually incorporate Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? Sounds kind of complicated.
Don't worry, it's not as bad as it sounds. Our sources had some great templates and strategies. Like, they suggest using action verbs that match each level of Bloom's taxonomy.
Action verbs. Give me an example.
Sure. Instead of a vague goal like students will learn about the solar system, a more specific and actionable objective might be students will be able to compare and contrast the different planets in our solar system based on size, composition, and distance from the sun.
Ah, okay, I see. So it's about making it crystal clear what students should be able to do with the information.
Exactly. That way, you're not only giving clearer guidance, but you're also setting learners up for success at those higher levels of thinking. It's about moving beyond just rote memorization and towards a deeper, more meaningful understanding. Wow, this deep dive has flown by.
I know, right? It's amazing how much ground we've covered.
From the history of Bloom's taxonomy to how we can actually use it to learn more effectively.
It's not about making learning harder, it's about making it smarter.
I like that. So before we wrap up, what's one key takeaway our listeners can walk away with today?
Just one. That's tough.
I know, right? There's so much good stuff here.
Okay, if I had to pick one thing, I'd say Be more mindful of how you learn.
Mindful learning, huh?
Yeah, like really pay attention to what's working for you and what's not.
So instead of just going through the motions,
Exactly. Ask yourself those why and how questions.
don't just memorize the facts. Try to understand the concepts behind them.
Right. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Try new things, even if you make mistakes along the way.
It's all part of the learning process, right?
Exactly. Embrace the journey, I always say.
Learning isn't a race, it's a marathon.
Or
Or maybe more like a choose-your-own-adventure.
I like that. And with Bloom's taxonomy, we have this incredible tool to help us navigate that adventure and reach our full potential.
Absolutely. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Bloom's taxonomy. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these ideas as much as we have.
It's been a blast.
And remember, the learning never really stops, right? So keep those minds sharp, those curiosity fires burning.
And we'll catch you on our next deep dive.
See you then.